All right, good Monday to you. This is an update on Milton, which I think is going to be a historic storm for Florida. It's going to grow. It's going to get bigger. We're going to talk about why that's going to happen. We're also going to look at some of the potential tracks. We're going to talk about what players are really going to mess with the storm too. This wind shear up here is going to cause the storm to get bigger. We're also looking at the ocean temperatures, which are above average, and there's some concerning weather still with Helene, at least the effects of Helene. Now, here's what I'm talking about. Some really cold air moving in next week, although it's going to get chilly in the mountains this week, and that could really hamper some of the cleanup efforts, at least some of the workers. I mean, it's tough to work in the cold, right? But now you've also got a ton of folks without power, temperatures dropping, and some of these areas may not see power for weeks and weeks. So maybe a humanitarian crisis, unfortunately, developing in western North Carolina and East Tennessee. All right, let's talk about what's going on with Milton. This could be another big storm right now, expected to become a category 4, maybe a 5. And look how tightly compacted this storm would be as we head into Tuesday evening. This is the west coast of Florida now, approaching Tampa, St. Pete, down here toward Naples. This is not just going to be a coastal storm. This is going to affect pretty much the entire peninsula in one way or another. And as it approaches the coast, notice how it's getting bigger. That wind field is expanding more and more because it's going to encounter some upper level winds that's going to start to shear the storm apart. That will cause it to get bigger. That means more inland wind damage. So it's not just a coastal storm. And don't get too caught up in the exact track. In fact, the National Hurricane Center margin of error on day 3 is about 100 miles. The exact track, still not known. That core eye wall, while it will cause a tremendous amount of damage, we're going to get a wide swath of wind here from North Florida. I would argue even parts of South Georgia that are still cleaning up from Helene, also here into the Florida Panhandle where we're still dealing with that wind damage and, of course, that storm surge damage. And just we're going to get another blow here, unfortunately. And inland, too, we're talking about hurricane gusts all the way along the I-4 corridor south, I would say maybe even down to Sebring, maybe even down to Fort Myers, some strong tropical storm force winds. Either way, I think you've got to make preparations now for some strong damaging winds, power outages, and some tornadoes too that will be spawned with a landfalling hurricane. As we move into Thursday, look at this. Southeast Georgia, maybe even the coastal areas of South Carolina will likely feel some tropical storm force winds on this track. It could get really, really rough here. Now, the storm will move out to sea pretty quickly, but coastal impacts will be felt all along the Carolinas as this thing moves up to the north. The official track brings it very close to the Yucatan Peninsula from the National Hurricane Center. It has it becoming a major hurricane. I think that's going to happen. A Category 4 is the forecast with winds up to 145. I'm not so sure that this thing doesn't get stronger. Some of those models that we were looking at, I mean, you go back here, I mean, that right there, you're looking at easily a Cat 5 at this point. And this thing could be possibly a Cat 4 as it moves ashore. I don't know that it holds up to a Cat 5, but boy, it's a dangerous storm. Do not let your guard down on this one. Prepare now. You've got today, Monday, and you've got Tuesday. That's really it. At that point, it's going to start to really go downhill from there. And it's not a good time either. We've already got rain here. Clearly, a Florida landfall here is looking likely now. And there's that wind field. I just want to show you how wide it gets. It goes from here to, look at this. Now, once it gets into Florida, here, so almost doubling in size as it approaches the peninsula. And here's why. I'm going to back it up just a little bit. This is wind shear here across the northern Gulf into Florida. The storm right now is in an environment that's not really sheared, so to speak. In other words, there's not a lot of change of wind direction with height. While with severe weather, that's really what you need to see. With hurricane development, these tropical heat engines, if you will, that wind shear allows those storm clouds to just grow higher and higher. Those tops get colder and colder, and then you end up with just that billowing effect, so to speak, and that just continues to suck that air in at the surface and then exhaust it in the upper levels. So a very favorable environment for that to happen. Now, once it moves close to Florida, it really starts to get sheared out. That's going to start to cause the storm to really get kind of tore apart. Those storms will start to lean. They'll get ripped to the north and east. That's also going to take our wind field, and it's going to expand it and make it a bigger impact. A problem that I'm also seeing here, that's some really warm water here, a lot of heat energy out here in the Gulf of Mexico. So as this thing moves to the north and east, it's going to be in a not just a favorable environment for wind shear, but also a lot of fuel there in the ocean. Here's your arrival of wind times along the west coast of Florida. Again, you've got today and Tuesday to prepare. By Tuesday afternoon and evening, we're going to start to feel the effects. And by Wednesday morning, it's all across the Panhandle with the earliest reasonable arrival time of these tropical storm force winds from the National Hurricane Center. All right, wave heights are going to be a big deal here. Look at this. this pink, that right there, folks, is close to 50 feet in height. Now, that would be your maximum heights. That doesn't mean every wave is going to be 50 feet. The idea, though, is that some of those crests could be that big. When you get a storm surge of 10 to 20 feet, I mean, if the waves are 20 to 30 feet, you're still going to have a huge, huge problem. So this is going to be not just a coastal issue here. Tampa Bay, St. Pete, Clearwater. Listen, I think south too, all along the coast, down to Naples, all the way up to the Nature Coast. You've got to watch this. We're going to have a tremendous amount of storm surge here. And then, of course, into Tampa Bay with that feeding into the bay. Now, as this storm moves inland, again, we're not going to be just looking at the winds along the coast. We're talking about from Sebring north to Orlando, all the way up to Ocala, Gainesville, and then look up towards Jacksonville. That wind too here is going to be an issue. And then along the southeast coast of Georgia, down to Savannah. In these areas, pay attention to the weather over the next 24 hours and the track of this storm, because I think even into parts of middle Georgia, I mean, we could be looking at winds up to 40, maybe even 50. It doesn't look like anything like Helene, but we're still cleaning up here, right? So you've got a lot of loose trees and limbs. You get 30, 40 mile per hour wind gusts that could bring some of those additional trees, at least that are maybe hanging by a thread, down. And then this thing is pretty much gone. All right, let's talk about the cold air that's on the way, because I think that's going to be a problem. Once we get into Friday, Milton will be gone and high pressure building in here. So temperatures will be getting cold here in the mountains. And again, remember the folks without power. That's going to be a concern. Look at temperatures today. Cool in the northeast where we've been kind of chilly, but look at tonight. We're dropping down to the 40s here into the western Carolinas and East Tennessee. I want to take you really far ahead. This would be next Tuesday. Some of the models getting us really cold here, near freezing in the mountains, and it's going to be cold too, really. We're getting a good shot of fall air here across a good chunk of the northern U.S., and that really pushes pretty far south too. This may push all the way down into Mississippi, Alabama with some 40s here across the northern parts of these states and even into North Carolina. So much colder air on the way, and I'm concerned. There's thousands of folks without power. Who knows when it will be restored in parts of western North Carolina and East Tennessee, where not only towns and homes are washed away, but when that went away, think about it, guys, the power grid is gone too in many of these areas. Maybe a humanitarian crisis developing in western North Carolina. It's not a good situation, and I know a lot of you folks have been chiming in about that concern, and I think this cold air heading into winter, this could be really bad. So continue to say prayers for the folks in East Tennessee and western North Carolina. And listen, if you're watching all across the country, I know people are tuning into this channel from all over. You know, say some prayers for your friends here in the Southeast, especially into Florida, because it's going to get rough over the next couple of days. All right, that's all I got. Thanks for watching. If you're new to the channel, my name is Travis Roberts. I'm a former TV chief meteorologist. I've been out of the television business now for several years, but I still enjoy forecasting and the challenges of it. And winter's ahead. I don't like the bad side of weather. I've just never been the type of meteorologist that likes it. I do not like to see what's going on in the Carolinas. I don't like hurricanes. I don't like any of this stuff. But I've also seen the impact that forecasting can have on people's lives to prepare for things like this. So thanks for subscribing. Thanks for watching. See you next time.